to help manage your network more effectively. In this module, you will learn about Central and all of its amazing features. Introducing Aruba Central. Central is a cloud-based management system to manage Aruba wired and wireless devices with automated and manual ways to add Aruba wired and wireless devices. You can add new services as needed: advanced analytics services, connectivity, health, guest access, and more. No need for additional support. The GUI offers low-effort management with wizards, updates, menus, and CLI support with an easy, flexible subscription license. Central is simple, with no hardware or software requirements. It's in the cloud with all the resources needed for performance and visibility. It's reliable with guaranteed uptime and local management in case cloud connectivity fails. Plus, you get intelligent features to improve performance and visibility, with analytics to improve the business and user experience. And I really like the flexibility, so easy to scale up as needed to accommodate growing systems and ongoing innovations with simple subscription options and anytime, anywhere access. Central supports management, monitoring, and configuration for the Aruba IAPs, switches, and SD branch gateways. And as of Central 2.5.3, you can also manage Aruba AOS CX switches and APs and gateways at AOS 10. And since it's a cloud-based management system, it only requires a simple 1, 3, 5, 7, or 10-year subscription license, which includes tech support as well as other optional services. There are 5 ways you can onboard devices with Central. Zero Touch is the best way, as it simplifies installations. And all devices include a cloud key, which you can use to direct services to Central. You can manually add devices to Central or scan a device using the smartphone scanning application. And if you have an Activate account, you can add in rules to direct devices to Central. Central's secure cloud-based platform uses HTTPS connections and certificate-based authentication. Security features include secure intrusion detection and unauthorized rogue device info, tiered admin rights and multi-factor authentication, monitoring and device onboarding with iOS and Android mobile apps, and fast device provisioning with barcode scan. Here's the GUI overview screen. The Help Center has tutorials, documentation, Airheads community, view, update open cases, or start a conversation with a support agent. The account name takes you to the Applications and Global Settings. Your setting icon shows you your Central account customer ID. Now, if you have more than one account, you can switch and change your password and user settings, of course. Type in a few words in the search field to get AI replies or options. Here, Show Clients was requested, and 2 clients were displayed. Select one of the clients to see more information and action items. You can list all devices to filter your view with groups, sites, and labels, and for specific IAP clusters, gateways, or switches. You can also change the view based on time using the time filter. The left side shows context scopes. Selecting a context scope reveals appropriate menu options. Now, each scope has its own first-level tabs with second-level tabs to choose from. You can alter the view as either a list or graphs, and choose the gear icon to configure the device you're looking at. Okay, I'm going to give you a break from listening to me for a while and let you explore on your own. You'll be zoomed in on this Central overview screen you see here to explore Central management features. I'll talk to you again when you're done. You have two apps. Network Operation returns you to the central monitoring page. ClearPass Device Insight opens a new window to see all devices in your network. Use global settings to manage users and roles, key management, and subscription assignment to assign the keys to devices. There is also device inventory where you can add new devices and assign them to groups or a sub-account if you're an MSP. Use data collectors for device insight. Audit Trail tracks events, and you can configure the Aruba Cloud to use an external SAML 2.0 based identity provider for single sign-on. The API gateway is for interaction with REST devices, and use Webhook for triggered HTTP callback. The Managed Service Providers or MSP interface is an additional interface for MSPs to provision and manage tenant accounts, to administer network infrastructure for multiple organizations in a single interface. Use MSP mode to provision tenant accounts, allocate devices, assign licenses, and monitor tenant accounts and networks. Drill down to a specific tenant account for config and admin tasks. Tenants can access only their respective accounts, and only those features and application services to which they have subscribed. Users who manage their respective accounts end-to-end should use the standard enterprise interface. Now, this mode gives you complete access to provision and manage your accounts. And the REST APIs offer rich context information and easy third-party integration. It's time for a lab activity. And here's an overview of the remote lab environment. Now here's the URL and sign in. The figure here provides a brief review of lab tasks. Please see your lab guide for details. When you're ready, please continue with Module 2, all about Aruba's Central Managed Services Provider or MSP features. Hello and welcome back. This is Module 2 of the Managing Campus Networks with Aruba Central course. In today's world, many customers want a turnkey solution for their network to outsource management functions. Central's Managed Service Provider or MSP provides this capability. After completing this module, you should understand the differences between a Managed Service Provider or MSP versus a standalone provider or SP, as well as their functions. You should also know how to enable and customize your MSP account and how to create customers and assign devices and groups for management. A standalone central account can manage thousands of devices. Now, this is perfect for a customer who wants to monitor and manage their own network and wants a turnkey solution. A third-party service provider, or SP, can install all the devices. Now, once installed, the customer can get the devices up and running with little effort, and the service provider can do all the monitoring and managing. Now, the Managed Service Provider, or MSP, allows you to view all devices on all tenant accounts, adding clients as needed. From the MSP account, you can access the customer account by simply selecting the client from the list. SPs must create tenant accounts, monitor and manage all networks, and portal customization. They must onboard all devices and assign keys and subscriptions. The SP sets up sub-accounts to give each customer as much or little access as they request. The customer can also monitor devices and users and manage device configuration, or the tenant can allow the SP to configure and manage devices for them. Now, once you create the MSP account, the SP will purchase the devices and keys to customize the central interface. The SP can then create customer accounts and assign devices and subscription keys to each customer. These devices show up in the customer account. The SP can monitor, configure, and troubleshoot all devices for all customer accounts if required. All the customer needs to do is to install the devices, if not installed by the SP, and wait for the devices to show up in the customer account. You can pre-configure the device or install it as ready for configuration. The cool thing is there's no additional cost for the SP to get easy device and subscription management with resource relocation. To give an account MSP capabilities, simply enable Managed Service Provider mode. Confirm the change and the account moves from a standalone customer account to an MSP account. Now, compared to this customer account, the MSP has less context. This is because the MSP can simply drill down to the customer account to view, configure, and troubleshoot from there. As the MSP, you see an overview of customers with all alerts from all tenants. You can configure wired and wireless networks and default configurations for each tenant. Configure guest access splash pages, manage maintenance tasks like firmware upgrades, and organize the entire system with group management features. Now check out the icon here in the top left. Click it for the MSP Global Settings, where you set up tenant account users and roles, along with device inventory, keys, and subscriptions, which you push out to tenant accounts. There's an audit trail with all events and an API gateway, and you can set up single sign-on and webhooks from the MSP level. You create groups mainly to ease configuration. Devices in the same group get the same config. Groups also help with device monitoring. Select a group to see only those devices. Suppose you have a building with several devices. You create a main building AP group with all IAPs as members. IAP configuration and SSID advertisement is based on this membership. An IAP can only belong to one AP group, and if you want all IAPs to advertise the same SSIDs, employee, voice, and guest in this scenario, then you only need one AP group. You also create Group Switch 1 for the configuration of Aruba switches in the building. Now, devices not assigned to a group fall into the default group. Central is a cloud system, so there's no limit to the number of clients you can configure. To go to an existing tenant account from the overview page, just click on the customer name. To create a new one, just select Add New Customer and enter customer name and description in the pop-up. Then you can choose to link an MSP group, the default group for this customer. And you can lock down any SSID in this group, thus preventing the customer from making changes to their default group. Now, this default group thing is pretty simple. Suppose you have 3 MSP groups, each with a configuration. When you add a customer and link it to the MSP group, that configuration becomes the default configuration in the customer's central account. Let's take a look. And here we're looking at customer 1. The default group has WLAN employee 1 configured. Now, this only affects the default group. And customers can always create any group they need, and the SP can go from the MSP to customer account and also create groups. By the way, notice that the customer has the SP's logo.
Tadi ada bagian yang nggak ada suaranya ya?
Ada.
Ya, Asi udah ulang juga nggak ada suaranya. Takutnya di Asi doang nggak muncul.
Hello again, and welcome back to Module 3 of the Managing Campus Networks with Aruba Central course. Upon completion of this module, you should be familiar with how to onboard devices into Central and to describe the different onboarding methods you will use in Central. In a standalone account, the onboarding, key, and license assignment is all done in the customer account. When the customer account was created by the MSP, then the MSP does onboarding, key, license assignment, device assignment, and setting up administrative roles. There are 5 ways you can onboard devices with Central. Zero Touch is the best way as it simplifies installations. And all devices include a cloud key, which you can use to direct devices to Central. You can manually add devices to Central or scan a device using the smartphone scanning application. And if you have an Activate account, you can add in rules to direct devices to Central. Okay, let's look at Zero Touch installation. Here's an example of how new customer MyCorp Inc. receives the Aruba Central key and joins the Central network. First, MyCorp sends an Aruba purchase order or PO for 100 devices, IAPs, and then Aruba delivers the 100 devices or IAPs along with the Aruba Central key. Aruba updates Activate with PO information, including customer name, the key X, and the 100 purchased IAPs. And we use Activate to dynamically provision wraps, IAPs, and controllers to point them to controllers, Airwave, or Central. Then MyCorp employee John Customer registers the Aruba Central via email and adds the Central subscription key that Aruba sent along with the purchase confirmation. The Central account communicates with Activate and gives the customer's name for key X. Then Activate informs the Central account about the 100 IAPs that belong to this account. The IAPs appear in MyCorp's Central inventory under My Devices. The APs are now in inventory. But what happens when they boot up? A factory-shipped UAP or one in factory default state follows a discovery process to become a controller-based or instant-based AP or central-controlled AP. Now, if the UAP is on the same subnet as an IAP swarm, it receives a master beacon and then joins the cluster as an IAP. If the UAP does not receive a master beacon, then the UAP contacts Activate. If Activate recognizes the UAP's MAC address, then it checks to see if a newer image is available. If so, the UAP uploads the image, reboots, and restarts the process. If Activate has a rule and the UAP has the newer image, then it depends on the rule. Activate rule may send the AP to connect to Airwave and upgrade the image, if needed, and get its configuration. Or The Activate rule may send the AP to communicate with Central for its image and configuration, or the rule may send the AP to a controller as a cap or wrap to get its image and configuration. If Activate has no information or if no rule on this UAP is defined, then the UAP attempts to discover an airwave server. This could be manually configured on the AP or via DHCP or via DNS discovery. Once connected to Airwave, the AP downloads a new image if needed and its configuration. Now, if there's no Activate rule and no Airwave server, then the UAP checks Flash for a manual configuration for an Airwave server or a Central account. If all this fails, then the AP tries to do a controller discovery. It uses the static server IP if one was assigned at AP boot prompt, or based on option 43 from a DHCP server, via Aruba Discovery Protocol or ADP, or it uses DNS resolution to Aruba-master, or the server name if one was configured at the AP boot prompt. If all this fails, the UAP will be an IAP and broadcast an SSID that you can connect to and launch a web UI. Now, if there's no keyboard input or an active web UI session for 15 minutes, the UAP reboots and starts the discovery process again. But before that restart, you should ensure that the AP is factory reset and that the UAP controllerless setting is not configured, and delete any flash provisioning rules. Now, there are two key commands to debug AP Bootstrap issues due to heartbeat timeout. Show data path tunnel heartbeat shows the number of heartbeats received and lost, and the last sequence number received. You can match this against counters from the AP debug stats data. Show data path frame shows frame counters for any heartbeats dropped in the data path. If a UAP has internet access, it communicates with the cloud-based Activate system. If you configure the UAP in Activate, Activate directs the UAP to a management platform, in this case, the customer's Central account. So the UAP communicates with Aruba Central, which pushes down a configuration that directs the UAP to become an IAP. Now, this simplifies IAP deployment. Just plug your UAP in and it automatically converts to an IAP and gets a full configuration. All UAPs in the cluster are converted to IAPs and a VC is elected. Cool! Complete IAP cluster setup, no local expertise needed. The VC is the main point of communication with the Central account and receives its configuration from that account. And note that all IAPs in the cluster communicate with Central to push app RF statistics and for live troubleshooting. Aruba switches in factory mode do the same. They boot up, get an IP address, and then attempt to communicate with Activate. If successful, Activate directs the switch to a Central account to receive its configuration. Let's look at IAP and switch cloud keys. The VC master periodically contacts Activate and identifies all cluster IAP MAC addresses. Activate relates the MAC address as part of a customer's PO. Then Activate sends the information down to the VC, including a cloud activation key. To see the assigned cloud activate key, log on to your IAP cluster and navigate to Maintenance About. All devices that communicate with Activate get a cloud activation key. Here you see a switch that has communicated with Activate and received a key. Use the Show Activate Provision command to see and copy the cloud activation key. And now let's look at manually adding devices. To manually add devices in the same device inventory GUI page, click Add Devices. Enter the IAP MAC addresses and serial numbers to be added to your Central account. You can find this information on the Instant GUI page or on the device's labels. If another Central account already manages the IAP, the operation fails, of course. Now let's look at smartphone operations. You can download two different applications for Central. The Aruba Central app is for those who are managing a Central account. You must log in with your Central credentials. Meanwhile, the Aruba Installer app is for those who are installing the devices but do not manage them. You can onboard devices from the smartphone's central account. This is the same as manually adding devices, except you use your smartphone app and camera to scan the barcode. The obtained MAC and serial number information appear lower on the screen. Activate verifies the IP information, and if the IP does not belong to any other central account, it is added as a new device. Okay, now it's time to explore Install Manager. Aruba Central's Install Manager helps to simplify and automate site installations and device deployments, which require extensive coordination between the customer's on-site IT admins and installation personnel, especially with multi-site deployments. Now, to access Install Manager, log into the central UI at the customer level. Select Organization under Maintenance, and then select the Install Manager. The Install Manager uses the customer configured site as a base for installation. Notice that you are looking at a list of sites here at the Site Installations tab. Okay, now let's slide on over to the Installers tab, where Install Manager can help you manage installation activities. You can create installer profiles, assign site deployments for installers, and monitor deployment status for each site from a remote location. Now here you can see that 3 installers have been created: Fred, John, and Leonardo. To create more, simply click the plus icon you see here. Installers are technicians that must visit a physical location and install devices. Enter the name and phone number of the technician to be assigned to an installation site and specify when their profile expires. Select sites to be assigned to the installer. Now, this all ties into the Aruba Installer mobile app to be installed on each technician's mobile device. Technicians are automatically logged out of the Aruba Installer app on the specified date. Now, let's take a look at that mobile app, which allows the installers to scan devices, connect them to the provisioning network, and report task status to IT administrators. When you add an installer in Aruba Central Install Manager, an SMS notification is sent to the installer's mobile device, with links for downloading the Aruba Installer mobile app. The technician simply downloads the app from the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and signs up as an installer. They sign in with their name and request code, which is sent via text message. And they use this code and password for login. Administrators can verify installer registration status on the Install Manager installer's dashboard in Aruba Central. The installer's dashboard displays status indicators for installers. Invited means the installer is added and an SMS notification is sent to them. Registered means the installer has registered using the Aruba Installer mobile app. And verified means the installer accepted the installation invite and successfully registered with the installer app. Okay, now you should explore licenses, keys, and subscriptions. In Central, there are foundation keys and advanced keys. There are keys for AP switches, SD branch gateways, and gateways at AOS 10. AP foundation keys are assigned to IAPs and may be assigned to APs at AOS 10. Also, the AOS 10 APs can be assigned an advanced AP key for more functionality. There are AP Foundation licenses that are assigned to IAPs and may be assigned to APs at AOS 10. AOS 10 APs can also be assigned an advanced AP license for more functionality. AOS 10 gateways have a Foundation license, and there's an application license for Central and ClearPass Device Insight integration. The SD branch keys are 3 tiers: Foundation, Advanced, and Security licenses. There are Foundation licenses for the 70XX, 90XX, and 72XX gateways, and advanced licenses for 70XS, 90XS, and 72XX gateways. You can also assign Foundation with Security or Advanced with Security, but this is for the 90XX gateways only. The base licenses are the same, but limit you to 75 clients. Now, there are Foundation and Advanced licenses for the various types of switches, and licenses are based on 1, 3, 5, 7, or 10-year subscriptions. The Account Home Global Settings Key Management page allows you to access MSP or standalone central applications. Key Management shows your current licenses, and you can add licenses as needed. Here in the Key Management section, the license keys are broken down into 4 sections. Access points for IAPs and AOS 10 APs, keys for AOS and AOS CX switches, and for SD branch and AOS 10 gateways. The last section is for application licenses for Central and ClearPass device inside integration. All right, let's talk about license conversion. Now click Download License Conversion Info to see what licenses were automatically converted when the Central account went to 2.5.3. Suppose you had 200 IAPs using device licenses in Central, but actually had 250 device licenses with 50 not assigned. Then 200 DM licenses would be converted to Foundation AP licenses for your 200 IAPs reporting to the Central account. Likewise, a switch using a DM license would be converted to a Foundation switch license matching its model type. You may have licenses that were not assigned to any device. These licenses must be converted into the type of license you require. Select Convert DM to the new license type. And here you see that you have 14 device licenses that were not assigned when Central was converted from 2.52 to 2.5.3. You can now select these licenses to convert. You can convert your 14 device licenses to just about any other Foundation licenses. Here, 10 of the DM licenses will be converted to AP Foundation licenses, and 4 device licenses will be converted to Foundation 70XX/90XX for SD branch. Any licenses not converted before December 31st, 2021 will be automatically converted into Access Point Foundation licenses. How about license assignment? Once the keys licenses have been added to the Key Management app, then you can go to the License Assignment app. Here you can assign the licenses to your devices in the network. License assignment can be done at the MSP level or at a standalone Central account. You can select All to give license subscriptions to all your devices, or just select the devices you want and click on Manage. You can update license assignment for any new devices assigned to the Central account. You can avoid this manual work by selecting Auto Assign. And remember, the MSP is responsible for assigning licenses for each customer. For the selected devices, you can now select the license type. The system only shows licenses valid for the type of devices you have selected. Since we were in the AP license summary page, only the valid AP licenses are displayed. If gateway had been selected, you'd see several gateway license options. Select your license type and click Assign. And also, service subscriptions for Aruba Central support application services that you can run on provisioned devices. Suppose you have instant APs. You can assign a service subscription for Presence Analytics. And you can scroll down to view network service subscriptions and decide which devices get certain services. Now, there are 3 service keys. The Cloud Guest allows you to use cloud-based captive portal. Presence Analytics is also a service key. And to view UCC call status, subscribe to this service key. Clarity Network Service is deprecated. The Wi-Fi Connectivity Dashboard has replaced Clarity. The Wi-Fi Connectivity Dashboard displays global connectivity details and insights. You do not require a separate service subscription to view the Wi-Fi Connectivity Dashboard. Once you assign a subscription key to a device, then Central will control the device. In this example, the IAP has no configuration tab and management is set as Aruba Central. If the IAP loses access to Central account for more than 15 minutes, then a full local configuration is restored. Well, let's explore some troubleshooting tools and techniques. On the IAP, you have access to several troubleshooting commands. Just navigate to Support in the IAP GUI page and look for Central Commands. Now on the IAP console, you can issue the command show activate to find the activate status. This example shows a problem with a status of fail prov no shipped. This indicates that activate is not aware of the IAP or the IAP lacks internet access. Another useful command is show AP debug cloud server. This example shows that cloud config received equals false. If the IAP has internet access, then you should verify the activate account. Maybe it's failing because the customer has their own activate account or they are using the main Aruba activate account. Either way, it's probably time to contact technical assistance. In this example, you are troubleshooting an Aruba 2920 switch. The show activate provisioning command reveals an enabled activate provision service, and more importantly, that an activate key is present. Now, the activation key is downloaded from Activate, so you know the switch has Activate access. This show Aruba Central output reveals that you don't have a server URL and the switch is not connected. It could be that Activate has no provisioning rule for this switch, or perhaps the central account has not given the switch a subscription key. You can turn on the Debug Aruba Central and the Debug ZTP to further analyze the problem. In this example, the logs confirm that the switch has Activate access, but Activate has no rules for this switch. It could be that Activate or Central does not have a subscription key to this device. Once the problem has been fixed, use Show Aruba Central to validate. You should see that the switch is connected to the central account. It's time for the next lab. Here's an overview of the remote lab environment, where each student has keys as a kind of customer for our main MSP Central account. And here's an overview of lab tasks. After you've completed the lab, or whenever you're ready, please continue with Module 4, Central Groups, Sites, and Labels. Hello again, and welcome back to Module 4 of the Managing Campus Networks with Aruba Central course. Now, when you upload all your devices to Aruba Central, it might feel a bit challenging to organize all your devices and reports, but it's easy once you understand how to use group sites and labels. Now, in this module, you will learn the purpose for groups, labels, and sites within Aruba Central. You'll discover how to filter information using these categories and understand the difference of information between a group, a label, and site for filter purposes. We begin with central groups. You create groups mainly to ease configuration. Devices in the same group get the same configuration. Groups also help with device monitoring. Select a group to see only those devices. IAPs advertise SSIDs based on their AP group membership and the configuration of that group. If you want all IAPs to advertise the same SSID, then you only need one AP group. An IAP can only belong to one AP group at a time. Consider the AP group named Main Building. Now, you've decided that all APs in your actual main building must support 3 SSIDs, Employee, Voice, and Guest. You also decided that IAPs in another building need the same configuration. Thus, both VCs are placed in the same group. And you created Group Switch 1 for the configuration of Aruba switches in the building. Certain employees work from home and have IAPs set up So you create a group named Home Office. The group supports an employee SSID that securely tunnels corporate traffic back to the office. And the Internet SSID bridges traffic directly to the local LAN and onto the Internet. All Home Office APs are members of this group. Okay, let's create groups. To build out your group persona, you should answer some key questions which will help you to determine the correct features to select. Pause the presentation to check it out. In the Customer Account Organization tab, you see Groups. Now there's always a default group, which includes any device not assigned to a group. Create new groups as needed, and then place the devices in the necessary groups. Simply drag and drop the device to the desired group. Now the VC is listed for IAPs. When you place a VC in a group, all IAPs in the VC cluster will get the configuration. If you have a configured IAP cluster, you can create a group and import that configuration into the group. Now let's talk about sites. Sites are more for actual sites used to select devices you want to monitor or manage. All sites you create appear in the Install Manager and on the Network Health Map. You create sites in the Organization tab on a solo account or an MSP's customer account. You have existing sites on the left and devices on the right. Simply drag a device to the appropriate group to set memberships. And remember, devices can only belong to one site. You can add a new site or do a bulk upload of many sites using an Excel file with names, addresses, cities, states, countries, and zip codes of the cities. So you click on New Site and enter the site name, street, city, country, and region. The more information you add, the more accurately the site will display on the map. Most information is mandatory except the zip or postal code. Okay, let's move on from the Organization tab on up to the Overview tab and check it out. Sites with proper addresses appear on the Network Health Map, a pictorial view of your network sites, color-coded with red to indicate potential issues or green to show a healthy status. Click the site to see detail on site issues or zoom into a site to get the street-level view. Note the user experience rating here, which comes from integration with Aruba UXI. And now it's time to explore labels. Labels are tags used to filter devices for remote monitor, manage, and report purposes. A device can have multiple labels, which can help you determine device ownership, departments, and functions. Now, suppose you have several buildings in a city, all with their own devices. So you create label Building 1, Floor 1, and all the devices in Building 1, Floor 1 associate to that label. Select the label to see only the devices attached to it. Unselect it to remove the filter. You might create other labels as shown here for other buildings, floors, cities, and perhaps a conference room label for even more granularity. So the noted AP here might associate with 4 labels: conference rooms, city ABC, building 1, and building 1, floor 1. You can create labels in a solo account or an MSP's customer account. Simply create new labels and then drag the devices onto the labels. Okay, let's wrap this module up with a discussion of filters. The filtering function shows in several different pages of the GUI, such as monitoring and reports. Use them to minimize what you monitor or configure. You can monitor all devices in a group or configure all devices in a group at once. Nice! Use labels to monitor specific areas and use sites to monitor specific sites and to keep track of installations in those sites. Okay, now it's time for a lab activity. And Here's an overview of lab tasks. Once you've completed the labs, or when you're ready, please continue with Module 5, IAP and switch configuration. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Module 5 of the Managing Campus Networks with Aruba Central course. What happens to all your devices once they're on the cloud in Aruba Central? What if you need to make changes to IAPs or your guest access configuration? You can complete all IAP, guest access, and wired configuration changes through Aruba Central. In this module, you'll learn to configure IAPs using central groups and learn the importance of guest access and the many ways to configure a guest WLAN. You will also learn how to configure switches via Central. We begin with Aruba Central IAP configuration. Navigate is shown to create groups. Groups help you manage configs for Aruba IAPs, gateways, and switches. You configure groups via GUI or using templates as shown here with the slider. Select what the group should contain, create a group persona, and click Add. Now you can create a single group with different configuration methods for each device type. Suppose you create a group named Group 1 and enable template-based configuration for switches and UI-based configuration for instant APs and gateways. Aruba Central identifies both groups under the single name Group 1. However, devices in the group marked for template-based configuration have a TG prefix added, TG Group 1. The others have no added prefix. Now you can use Group 1 as the group ID for workflows such as user management, monitoring, reports, and audit trail. Your groups appear here as shown. Select an IAP group to configure, and that configuration will apply to all IAP clusters in this group. Okay, you've selected a group and the device tab window. Now, click the configuration button at the top right to see this configuration window. Here's where you configure a WLAN for all IAP clusters, all cluster IAPs, and their radios. Now this is the basic configuration. To work with the advanced configuration, click on the Show Hide Advanced button option. Now you have multiple configuration options. Aruba highly recommends that you set up the country code and the VC name and IP address. If the country code has not been set, start here. Select the IAP country from the drop-down menu, and you can also select the time zone. When you save the settings, the IAP cluster will reboot. Navigate to Wireless Management Systems section to select an IAP cluster, rename the VC, and assign a static IP address. Simply select the pencil to get a pop-up window to set the VC name and static IP address. This VC name appears in Central, so use a unique name, distinct from other clusters. The VC's static IP address remains with the cluster regardless of which AP becomes the VC. I choose the Access Points tab to list all IAPs in a group. The view, of course, depends on any filter you may be using. Select an IAP and click on the pencil to see the IAP configuration window. You see the IAP name and other configurable parameters like zone and RF profile. After selecting the group or individual device, you can start the configuration, which you apply to IAP clusters in the Wireless Management app. Now you're looking at Step 1, name the SSID of a 5-stage configuration wizard. This WLAN wizard is an easy way to configure the SSIDs or IAP clusters. First, you assign the SSID a name, which the IAP network will broadcast. Pick an easily recognizable name for your clients. Then select the VLAN and IP address your users will receive. The IAP can use its own DHCP server or an external DHCP server. For each IAP assigned, you can use the internal VLAN pre-configured on the system or use your own custom VLAN assignment. For external servers, the native selection uses the same subnet as the IAP network. Static allows you to configure a VLAN, and dynamic signifies the VLAN will be derived. Now, configure security. Choose Enterprise for 802.1x options or Personal for a simple pre-shared key or PSK. Select Guest for captive portal options. Now, the Open option enables an unprotected, unauthenticated WLAN, typically not advisable. And then you configure the firewall settings with the user rights and review the summary page to confirm your configuration. Okay, let's explore guest access. You typically have at least one employee SSID with high security 802.1x authentication and encryption. Of course, employees can access the internet and certain corporate resources. And you need a separate guest access SSID to improve security and so employees do not reveal corporate access credentials to visitors. This guest SSID is to be used by all visitors, set up so users can only access the internet with no corporate access. Let's set it up. The guest management feature allows guests to connect and allows admins to control that guest access. Use the Guest Access tab to configure splash page profiles. If you select Cloud Guest, then the splash page originates from the central account. You can configure several splash pages so that different IAP clusters can show different splash pages. Simply click the plus sign to add a new splash page. Now, typically, a single network uses a single splash page. An MSP scenario likely needs multiple splash pages for various tenants. So you begin your configuration, which you can do for internal, external, and cloud-based. You can create a splash page profile for guest users who can access the internet by providing credentials configured by guest operators or social network login credentials like Facebook, Google+, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Facebook's Wi-Fi feature allows you to pair your network with a Facebook business page. If you do not have one, there's an option to create one from the customization page, which isn't shown here. Okay, now you've created a splash page, so slide over to step 2 and customize it to your needs. Set colors, add a logo and background image, and terms and conditions. Then configure localization. To localize or translate guest portal content, configure the parameters. You can enter titles for various buttons. Your splash page is complete, so now you apply it to a WLAN. Now, back at the WLAN wizard, you've already configured the SSID and VLANs, and you're here at the security step. This is all about the guest WLAN, so you set the slider to visitors, then set the port type. Internal captive portal uses the internal database. External uses an external server like ClearPass Guest. More complex setup, but handles more workflows. Cloud Guest is deliberately less customizable to keep configuration simple. Internal or cloud-based guest services require that you specify a splash page, while external services like ClearPass use their own splash page. And now we move into wired configuration. The central account detects device types in a group. If you have only AOS S devices, you will only see config options for that device type. Also true if the group only has CX devices. With an empty group, or one that has both AOS S and CX devices, then two icons appear as you see here. Select the icon for the target switch type to configure. You can do all of this in the same group, but it may ease administration to have them in separate groups. So you place switches in a GUI group, then select the device to see configuration options. GUI mode allows you to set many basic parameters for interfaces, security, VLANs, trunks, and much more. Notice that the AOS S or CX icons are not shown. This is because there is only a 3810 AOS S device in this group. If your network requires a more sophisticated configuration, you'll need to use template mode. Aruba Central supports both backplane stacking, BPS, and virtual switching framework, or VSF, switch stacking. As of Central 2.5.0, you can create switch stacks and add stack members from the UI with 2 easy steps. First, click the plus sign here to add the commander switch and specify interfaces. Then click the other plus sign to add a member switch and specify interfaces. Of course, stack configuration is possible only when the switches are online. The commander switch must run version 16.06 or later. If creation fails due to some issues, delete the stack entry and retry. Here are some more details on stack creation. Pause the presentation if you like and review these steps. Then, continue on to leverage templates to ease switch configuration tasks. Aruba Central templates provide a set of configuration commands for device provisioning to apply CLI configuration to multiple devices at once. To do this, you must assign switches to a template or TG group. A TG group could be for IAPs, switches, or gateways. It is best to create a separate TG group for each device type to simplify configuration. You set up a group in template mode, then import an initial template from a switch. Use the filter to select the TG group, then choose devices. You are still in monitoring mode. Then select the config icon at the top right. And once in configuration mode, select the Switches tab. Now there are no templates here, so place your best configured switch in this group. Select the plus sign to add a new template, and the pop-up appears. Enter a template name, select Aruba Switch from the device dropdown, then select the switch model and the software version. Now you can specify any of the following combinations: all for both model and version, all for model and a specific software version, all for version and a specific switch model. The template created for a specific switch model and firmware version takes precedence over the template created for all platforms and versions. And I should also mention the part name drop-down menu used to select the appropriate device. You can choose to build a new template or import configuration information from a switch already provisioned in the template group. This example shows only one 3810 48G switch. To build a new template, add the switch command information in the template text field. To import configuration text from a switch already provisioned in the template group, select the switch from which you want to import the configuration. Select Import Template, and the imported configuration appears in the template text box. Now that you have imported a template file, you can make modifications. But before doing this, you should understand more about the template file and variables. Central templates allow you to configure multiple devices in bulk, but sometimes parameters may vary per device. This is where variables are great, letting you modify configuration variable definitions as you need. Let's look at an example where two switches are in the Central 2920 Group 1. And you have defined VLAN 120 in the template, which should apply to both switches. But each switch should have a unique host name, so you leverage a variable, sys_hostname. You then create a variable file that defines the string to be used for that variable per switch. Now, when Central pushes down the configuration, each switch gets the common parameters and the variable parameters as appropriate. Okay, let's expand this simplified template icon into an actual template file with variables like sys underscore hostname variable and sys underscore module underscore command, which will both have values in the variable file to be assigned to specific switches. Now there's also some standard configuration commands at the bottom, and right in the middle there are some conditional variables with if and or statements. So if variable sys use DHCP is true or equals 1, then the subsequent statement applies. This tells VLAN1 to do a DHCP request and get an IP address. You would typically use this option when it is a new switch. If the statement is false, then move beyond the end if statement. Now the next if statement is with variable sys use DHCP. If this is false or equal to 0, then the subsequent statement applies. Configure an IP address to VLAN1 using two other variables, sys IP address and sys netmask. And we're working with variables, so let's get some variable files from Central. You can download a sample variable file to get an idea of variables and values. If you have a configured variable file, you can download this file and apply it, and you can upload a configured variable file. You can also make changes in the editor, but if you have several switches, this could take some time. It might be easier to download the sample variables file in the JSON or CSV format. Let's take a look. Common separated values or CSV files store tabular data in a plain text format, separated by commas. Now, this is part of any variable file that you download from Central and open in Excel. Variables sysserial and syslanmac are mandatory for all devices with a value that is its own serial number and MAC address. There are various standard variables, but you can also create custom variables. An underscore sys underscore must precede any custom variable, so Central recognizes it as a variable. If you modify the variable file, you must change the modified variable from N or no to Y for yes, so Central knows that a change has occurred for this switch. Also know that the sys underscore template underscore header and sys SNMP v3 engine ID are mandatory variables whose values must be populated, regardless of their use in the template. If the values are not set for these variables, Central re-imports the values when it processes the device's running config. Now let's look at JavaScript Object Notation or JSON, an open, standard, language-independent, lightweight data interchange format used to transmit data objects consisting of attribute-value pairs. JSON uses self-describing text format and is easy for humans to read and write and easy for any programming language to use as a data format. Okay, we understand CSV and JSON variable files, so let's edit a template file. Just navigate to the switch's template files. Unlike UI groups, template groups have minimal UI options and use the CLI commands to provision a device. Template groups allow you to automate switch deployments, but to minimize configuration errors and ease device-specific configuration troubleshooting, Aruba recommends that you be familiar with switch CLI configuration options. Okay, let's edit. Click the pencil icon. The Edit Template page shows CLI syntax for regular switch configuration commands and variables that translate into valuables in the variable file. In this example, the host name has a variable related in a template variable file. You must ensure that this CLI syntax is accurate. You should validate syntax on an actual switch before adding it to the template. Command text indentation must match indentation in the running config. And know that commands in the template are case sensitive. Central managed devices receive their configuration changes from Central, but this may actually fail. Central marks such instances as failed changes in the configuration audit dashboard. You can locate this information on the configuration page under template errors. If the condition persists, contact Aruba Central Technical Assistance. If devices had failed changes, you could scroll down and select Failed Config Differences to see the problems. To view the config difference, click on a switch to see a log of issues. There may appear to be various issues, but in fact this is a history of the failures. When you review the information, note the bottom-up timeline. In this example, initially there was an error on line 13 with command missing for port or invalid port 28-Jan. It looks like someone entered a date instead of a valid port range. When they made a correction attempt, changing it to 1-24, A1-A2, but made another text or format error. Now again, they changed the template file, but made a typo with 1-24. It looks like they just need to remove that comma so the template file reads 1-24 and all is good. And now it's time for lab activities. And here's an overview of lab tasks. Once you've completed the labs, or whenever you're ready, please continue with Module 6, Visual RF and Topology. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Module 6 of the Managing Campus Networks with Aruba Central course. To provide the best network coverage, you must know how to design your network. Aruba Central uses Visual RF to help you with network setup and place APs for optimal coverage. Upon completion of this module, you'll be able to plan Visual RF coverage for your buildings and review heat maps for potential issues. You'll also know how to evaluate your network topology and how to plan a new network. We begin with a Visual RF introduction. Visual RF provides an intuitive interface with simple pull-down menus and radio frequency or RF display and editing tools with pretty cool record and playback capabilities. You get very useful views to focus on users, APs, and site floor plans. Let's check it out. You can use VRF to plan APs and new building floor plans, and once deployed, you use VRF to analyze RF heat maps and client connectivity. Let's explore Visual RF setup. You add floor plans to sites. Select your site, go to Overview, and choose Floor Plans. To create a floor plan, click the background, choose New Floor Plan, and choose File to find a floor plan image on your hard drive. Now, Central supports CAD, DWG, JPEG, and PNG. Enter the floor plan name and number, click Save, and your floor plan is imported. Now, you should not have to resize a CAD drawing unless you see nonsensical dimensions. You should measure the actual length of the building so VRF has accurate scaling. Now, I use a measuring or surveyor's wheel that ticks off total length as you roll it along the floor, or you can zoom in on the building with Google Earth to get an estimate. And now that you know the building dimensions, here's how to resize a non-CAD image. Select the measure icon and the pointer changes to crosshairs. So you locate 2 points within the floor plan where you know the distance. Left click and hold, then drag your mouse to the second point and release. And once you do that, a distance dialog box appears where you enter the actual length and click OK. You can resize floor plans in Visual RF after you upload them, and you can also zoom in on a room or doorway to increase the accuracy of your sizing. Now, you can define the floor plan boundary to account for white space around the edges of the image, or an interior space such as an atrium. Add exterior walls to increase location accuracy by reducing the probability of AP placement outside the office. Because Visual RF uses existing RF information, generally only external walls are required for accurate client locations. Visual RF's dynamic attenuation feature uses AP to AP information to calculate attenuation for interior areas, negating the need for interior walls drawing. If your devices support AP to AP information, you should only draw exterior walls. And you can import the CAD file from the CAD layer page, which will add in walls. Now let's talk about planning. Use the Plan APs option to add APs to a floor plan for future considerations. Select the Advanced option to calculate required number of APs for the area based on speed, max number of clients, and clients per AP. Central stores data retention in the DB and provides a heat map snapshot every 30 minutes, keeping track of them for 7 days or 168 hours. Data remains in the database for 2 weeks or 336 hours before cleanup. Go to Edit mode to add deployed or planned devices, which can also be deleted. You can calculate AP count using the coverage calculator based on required signal strength or speed. Okay, now let's talk about deployed APs. If you're working on a pre-existing network with deployed APs, then select Add Deployed APs and manually drag and drop the APs in the proper floors and locations. If you are planning a new network or simply planning an expansion into a new building, then select Plan APs. Now, once you have placed the IAPs in their proper location, you can view the heat map. You can use the menu on the right to modify what you see on the heat map. Once you exit Edit mode, you should find yourself in Display mode. Click the eye icon to choose the display settings, whether to see deployed, planned, and/or rogue APs. Choose whether to see air monitors and clients, along with heat maps, regions, walls, and/or labels. Let's take a brief look at the VRF topology view. The topology pane gives you a topographical view of your network, great for documentation and troubleshooting. To see the topology, select a filter based on labels and sites. This example shows 3 IAPs and 1 switch. You can see the connections because the IAPs and switch are both in the Oakmead site. If the switch or IAP were in different sites or labels, you would only see the devices, but no connections. If you were to select a device, its information shows on the right side of the screen. Use the filter option to display only the IAP, switches, branch controllers, or any combination of what you want. Now it's time for lab activities. Here's an overview of lab tasks. Once you've completed the lab, or whenever you're ready, please continue with Module 7, Troubleshooting with Central. Hello and welcome back to Module 7 of the Managing Campus Networks with Aruba Central course. And network security is extremely important, especially when you have multiple users and devices accessing your network. Knowing how to distinguish between a security threat and a user or client issue is key to optimizing the experience. Aruba Central eases the troubleshooting process in so many ways. Upon completion of this module, you should be familiar with monitoring and troubleshooting your network. You will know how to review your network's health status and how to troubleshoot client issues. You will be more aware of network security with IDS IPS functions, and you will know how to review alerts to see network issues and customize the alerts to your needs. We begin with an overview. The Overview page has various tabs. The Network Health page is a site map of locations displayed in various colors. The Overview page shows a summary of bandwidth usage, client count, top APs by usage, top 5 clients, top IAP clusters by usage and by clients, application usage, and WLAN details. Central plots the graph for a 3-hour time range by default. Just click the temporal filter link to change this. And you get a more granular view by selecting the APs, switches, gateways, or security. Let's slide down from Overview to the Devices tab for details about APs, switches, and gateways. And we focus here on APs. And if you set the filter to all devices, you see all IAPs and VCs. Here you see IAP names, IP addresses, model type, and VC this IAP belongs to. Click the little circle icon to customize the fields shown in this view. Let's click on, say, IAP B1, and we'll open up an overview page with more detailed information. You see detailed device information and status on this summary page with links to the group for configuration and the site to see its location on a floor plan. You can blink the AP's LEDs to help on-site personnel find the AP. The Insight tab gives you status logs of all events for this AP. Drill down to view usage, clients, and RF status. You can also view VPN tunnel connections to a controller if there is one. Click the Actions drop-down to reboot the IAP. Now, if this is the VC, you can reboot the swarm or cluster. You can troubleshoot and open a window to the AP console. The Go Live option will do a continuous update to the information and graphs every 5 seconds. So, if we can see this information for IAPs, we can also drill down into switch detail. Now, I've gone to the Switch tab and selected the switch or stack to monitor. Now, this summary page shows the model, J number, serial number, and health status, along with group and site links for that detail. The network section shows the switch IP address and whether it is a stack or a standalone switch. We could scroll down to the ports section to see up and down ports and PoE status. You can also scroll down to see a switch diagram with color-coded VLANs. The Hardware tab reveals status info for power supplies, fans, status, CPU, and memory. And the Routing tab shows all IP interfaces and routing types and metrics. Okay, let's check out that AI Insights tab to see information about possible issues you should deal with. This example shows too many processes running and a possible memory leak. You should analyze which switch processes are using memory and keep an eye on memory usage over time for abnormal usage increases. Client troubleshooting ability is vital. The client page displays the total number of clients, bandwidth usage, and the application usage by the clients, connected to the wired and wireless networks. Let's click on a client to learn more about them. Now, this Summary tab shows details about the client data path. You see the client's connection status to a particular SSID and AP. The client section shows the client IP address, OS, and host name. The network info shows the client's VLAN, AP role, and authentication service, while the connection info shows information on radio channel, band, and client capabilities. The Action drop-down menu lets you disconnect or block the client. Across the top, you have tabs for AI insights, location information, and let's check out that Session tab, which shows apps used by this client. The application, category, usage, and sent received info viewable in list or graphical format. You can scroll down to see the website reputations percentage and the category usage. Click on an application for details. You have special tools and techniques to diagnose guest user issues. You see specific guest clients in the same way as any client, and you can see the same information. But we can go down one tab to the guest page for a list of network visitors. Use the drop-down to choose among multiple SSIDs if you have them. And here we see the session page. Just one lonely visitor today, running Windows and using a Firefox browser. And then we move right to the Account tab to see existing user accounts, whether self-registered users or manually added. You can download the guest information into an Excel file and add in visitors manually here at the Add Visitor button. Yeah, let's click on that Add Visitor button. Enter a unique name for the visitor identity, their login name. Optionally, enter the visitor's company name, email, and phone number. Then add the password or select Generate to autofill the password box for you. Check Send Access Code to send the access code by email or SMS. These options require you to configure the email and phone numbers. The Valid Till section determines when the visitor account expires in days, hours, and minutes, or choose Unlimited and the account will never expire. Then hit the Enable checkbox to activate or deactivate the account, and then save the account. You can also save and print the account information. Okay, recall we've been in a list view this entire time. Now let's move over to the summary view for graphical information on number of guests, average duration time, and maximum concurrent guests. You can also see guest count by authentication and a breakdown of the guest count per SSID. The client type shows you the devices used by clients. Now let's explore some special Aruba Central tools and commands. You can launch the Tools page from the main menu. Here you can select access point or switches and run various commands like ping. And you can also launch the tool from the client or device page. In this case, the device is preset in the window. Device check is for switches only and allows various switch tests like cable test, interface bounce, PoE bounce, and chassis locate. The Commands tab lists commands specific to a particular device to test the device and collect results based on your selection. When you start a troubleshooting operation, Aruba Central establishes a session with the selected devices and displays output in the device output section. You can use preset tools or issue commands to the devices. For show commands, first select a command category, then choose a command. View results at the bottom of the screen. Here's an overview of intrusion detection and prevention system capabilities. In the main menu, select Security to see rogues and interfering devices. Intrusion detection displays attack detectors and the top 5 client attack and intrusion system attack detectors. You can expand any entry to see overview information, and you can access location information when and if the network can triangulate the device. And now we explore alerts and events. Use the Alerts pane for information on all the types of alerts generated for events related to device provisioning, configuration, and user management. The 4 alert categories are critical, major, minor, and warning. Use the advanced filter to choose the type of alert you want to see. The Acknowledge button appears when you hover your mouse over an alert. You can select Acknowledge to accept that specific alert. Select Acknowledge All to acknowledge all alerts at once. The Events screen shows all network events. This example shows a series of fairly normal activities. You can filter the events to sharpen your view, and you can choose the graph icon to see total number of those events. Some alerts are just on and off alerts. You can configure other alerts with various parameters or criticality. You can set the severity to critical, major, minor, or warning. Next, you can set the severity threshold. Critical should be higher than major, and major should be higher than minor. You can restrict the scope of an alert by setting one or more parameters. Select a group to limit the alert to a specific group, and select a label to limit the alert to a specific label. You can also select a device if you want to limit the alert to a specific device. The audit trail page shows the logs for all the device management, configuration, and user management events triggered in Aruba Central. And now it's time for a lab. Here's an overview of lab tasks. Once you've completed the labs or whenever you're ready, please continue with Module 8, Network Analytics.